Imagine this scenario. Saigon, April 30th, 1975. You have a mere 72 hours to make a life-altering decision. Remain under communist rule or risk drowning in the treacherous waters of the South China Sea. Your neighbor, a doctor who dedicated 2 decades to saving lives, is meticulously wrapping thin sheets of gold in fabric, a form known as Kim Tan, or gold leaves. He's converting his entire life savings into something no larger than a deck of cards. The legitimate ferry to Malaysia costs $10 per person. However, a smuggler's dinghy across the open sea commands a price of $1,000 per person. For your family of 4, this means you need $4,000 in a currency the smuggler will accept, and you have only 48 hours to acquire it. The doctor, equipped with his gold leaves, is preparing to board the boat. Meanwhile, the family whose savings are tied up in a Saigon bank account remains in limbo. This exact protocol facilitated the escape of 1.5 million Vietnamese across the South China Sea. This isn't a fictional tale. It's a documented survival strategy from one of the 20th century's most extensive refugee crises. Let me share something about precious metals that no one discusses openly. Gold isn't meant for buying bread during a collapse, nor for trading cigarettes at checkpoints. Its true purpose emerges when borders close, institutions crumble, and you need to transport your family and your accumulated life savings across an international boundary. The aftermath is always the same, and the survivors invariably possess the same protective measure. The Vietnamese boat people developed one of modern history's most sophisticated escape systems, centered around Kim Tan, extraordinarily thin sheets of pure gold pressed into stacks and wrapped to minimize bulk. Here's the ingenious part. A 1-ounce gold bar, currently valued at $4,300 or 31 grams, is conspicuous, easily recognizable, and immediately identifiable to any border guard conducting searches. Gold leaves, conversely, could be stacked thinly, wrapped in fabric, and flattened into packages no larger than a deck of playing cards. If discovered during a cursory inspection, officials might mistake them for aluminum foil. A Vietnamese refugee family could carry thousands of dollars in value in a package that weighed virtually nothing. When a guard encounters what appears to be thin metal sheets, the immediate assumption might be that the item holds little significant value. The discovery of a recognizable gold bar, however, leads to immediate confiscation. But here's the crucial insight that changes everything. These families didn't accumulate gold to spend during the crisis. They accumulated it to cross borders during the crisis and to rebuild their lives after the crisis concluded. Consider Vienna, 1938. You are a Jewish banker, witnessing the unfolding Anschluss. You possess a certificate of deposit worth 50,000 Reichmarks. Your colleague, however, has 3 diamonds sewn into his coat lining. Guess which one of you is more likely to reach Switzerland? The most extensively documented case involves Oskar Schindler, who bribed SS officers with black market goods, food, and diamonds to secure the release of hundreds of Jewish workers from concentration camps. These bribes were effective because diamonds and gold retained their purchasing power even as the Nazi regime engaged in systematic genocide. The critical factor was that Nazi officials couldn't refuse these bribes because they represented tangible value that could be converted to currency or consumed directly. A person holding a certificate of deposit from a Vienna bank could not use that document to bribe a border guard. The document was either worthless or served to identify the holder as a target. The pattern, stages, and outcome are consistently the same. Paper assets reliant on institutional validation vanish when those institutions turn hostile. Tangible assets, requiring no external authority, retain value because their physical properties, their elemental composition, density, and rarity, are universally recognized. Let's conduct a forensic examination of the actual cost of safe passage in contemporary conflict zones. From 2015 to 2016, 1 million Syrians reached Greece in an 18-month period. The pricing structure was remarkably consistent. Smugglers charged approximately 1,000 euros per person for a seat in a dinghy to cross from Turkey to Greece. The legitimate ferry ticket cost just 10 euros, representing a 10,000% markup by converting a legal journey into an illegal one managed by criminal networks. A Syrian family of 4 needed 4,000 euros, months or years of savings, simply to secure passage to Greece. Crucially, this price was denominated in euros or US dollars. Families needed to convert local Syrian currency into foreign currency that smugglers would accept. On February 24, 2022, Russian tanks crossed the Ukrainian border at dawn. 50,000 people fled in the first 48 hours. Banks suspended electronic transfers, and ATMs were emptied within hours. You might have $20,000 in your account on paper, but in practice, you have nothing. One Ukrainian refugee managed to escape with Bitcoin on a USB drive and a written seed phrase. He sold some to acquaintances for cash, obtaining $600 worth of Polish zloty. Bitcoin worked for precisely one documented refugee. Here's what completely undermines the model for digital assets. Bitcoin requires internet connectivity to verify the blockchain, electricity to power devices, access to cryptocurrency exchanges, and familiarity with digital security procedures. Gold requires none of this. A refugee with gold can cross into any country, regardless of its level of economic development, and gold will retain its value and convertibility. Gold can be traded in the wealthiest nations with sophisticated banking systems, and it can also be traded in the poorest countries with only informal currency markets, because gold is universally recognized. The most revealing detail in the Ukrainian Bitcoin case is that the refugee did not continue to live in Poland as a Bitcoin holder. He converted his Bitcoin to fiat currency as rapidly as possible. Even under the most favorable circumstances for cryptocurrency, a tech-savvy refugee from a country with functioning cryptocurrency infrastructure, digital assets are treated as an intermediate step toward acquiring hard currency that can be spent on food, shelter, and passage. Venezuela provides a compelling control case. When the bolivar collapsed from 6.3 per US dollar in 2013 to over 3,000 per dollar by 2016, inflation reached 4,000% in 2017 alone. Your $10,000 in savings became worth just $250. Venezuelans who had accumulated savings in local currency watched their wealth evaporate. Those with gold, however, saw the nominal bolivar value increase substantially and could trade gold in black markets for US dollars at rates reflecting its true international value. If you're realizing that everything you thought you knew about economic security is wrong, then hit that subscribe button. This is the Independent Financial Historian. I perform autopsies on defunct empires so you can identify patterns before they recur in your own backyard. Drop a helicopter emoji if you're preparing for what's to come, and tell me what you'd like me to investigate next. I read every single comment. As one of you perfectly articulated after the last video, gold isn't for getting you through a collapse, it's for setting you up on the other side. Absolutely correct. Let's continue. Now, let's discuss what happens when you actually reach a safe country, because this is where most people's exit strategy falters. Under the Bank Secrecy Act, anyone entering or leaving the United States with more than $10,000 in currency must file FIN Form 105. Herein lies the legal loophole that illustrates why gold surpasses cash. Physical gold, bullion, and bars are not classified as currency or monetary instruments under the Bank Secrecy Act. Someone carrying $50,000 worth of gold bars across the US border technically does not trigger the Form 105 filing requirement. Someone carrying $10,001 in cash, however, does. But here's the pitfall. While gold isn't classified as currency, it is still subject to customs declaration obligations. Failure to accurately declare precious metals results in seizure under customs enforcement power. Not declaring gold isn't a Bank Secrecy Act violation, but it is a customs law violation and can lead to the confiscation of the entire amount under civil asset forfeiture statutes. The procedural mechanics are brutal. When U.S. Customs seizes assets, they issue a notice of seizure. You have 30 days to respond. For someone who has just fled a war zone, without legal representation, an understanding of American legal procedures, and potentially no stable address, this process becomes practically impossible to navigate. The burden of proof falls on you to demonstrate that the seized assets are not connected to illegal activity. For someone fleeing a conflict zone with gold accumulated through decades of work and saving, proving a legitimate source without access to bank records or documentation becomes exceedingly difficult. Stay with me on this, because this is where theory clashes with reality and most people's strategies collapse. A 1-ounce gold bar is currently valued at $4,340. For a refugee attempting to bribe a border guard for passage costing $300 to $500, offering an entire 1-ounce bar represents a massive overpayment, requiring complex negotiations about change. Moreover, a 1-ounce bar cannot be simply broken into fractions without specialized equipment. If you offer a bar worth $4,300 for passage costing $300, you have no practical way to access the remaining $4,000 in value without finding a jeweler to melt and divide it, which is unlikely at a border checkpoint. The optimal denomination is the fractional bar, specifically 1 gram, 5 gram, or 10 gram bars. A 1 gram gold bar weighs 0.032 troy ounces and is worth approximately $140 at current gold prices, small enough to use as a medium of exchange for specific services without complex negotiations. A refugee can offer a 1 gram bar for passage, and the guard instantly knows its approximate value. This distribution offers multiple advantages. It reduces catastrophic loss if a single bar is discovered and seized, and it provides granularity for actual transactions. This strategy facilitates the measured deployment of assets during different phases of an escape. For instance, 1 gram bars are suitable for initial fuel and guide payments. 5 gram or 10 gram bars are ideal for smugglers, and larger bars can be reserved for final transactions in the destination country. The data clearly demonstrates why precious metals retain their value when authority structures break down. Gold possesses inherent value that requires no external explanation, justification, or validation from authorities. When a border guard encounters someone offering a gold coin, they instantaneously recognize its intrinsic worth without needing institutional verification. During a state collapse, precisely when an exit protocol becomes critical, the institutional authority underpinning paper currency vanishes. A guard serving a regime on the brink of defeat will refuse that regime's currency because of the fear that the regime will entirely collapse, rendering the currency worthless. Gold, however, transcends any specific regime or political system. A Nazi official in the final days of World War II would reject a suitcase full of Reichsmarks, but might accept gold as a bribe, precisely because gold retains its value through transitions of power. As one commenter on my last video perfectly articulated, my grandfather, who lived through 2 world wars in Germany, often said you needed enough silver or gold coins to be able to bribe a guard. Your grandfather understood the true nature of money when the state becomes an adversary. The certainty of liquidity significantly influences a guard's willingness to accept a bribe. Gold is convertible to cash in any country, at any time, with its price determined by well-established global markets. When you offer a guard a gold bar, they understand they can take it to any gold buyer or international banking institution and convert it to cash within hours. For individuals successfully reaching a safe country and seeking to retain their accumulated gold without seizure, proper documentation is crucial. The fundamental principle of declaring assets at the border may create friction and delays, but failing to declare them almost guarantees seizure. The most effective legal strategy involves carrying proof of purchase, including invoices, receipts, certificates of authenticity, and assay certificates. For someone who accumulated gold over decades before fleeing, obtaining all this documentation might be impossible, but even partial documentation strengthens your legal standing. Once customs officials discover an attempt to conceal assets, your credibility is destroyed. It's generally more effective to declare all holdings upon arrival and accept the ensuing delays and inquiries, rather than attempting partial concealment, which is likely to be discovered. A more sophisticated strategy involves entering initially without attempting to import large quantities, then later importing metals through legal channels once residency is established and legal counsel can be engaged. This approach mitigates the risk of having all accumulated wealth seized at the initial border crossing. So, what should you do? There are 5 key elements. 1. Accumulate fractional gold now. Focus on 1 gram, 5 gram, and 10 gram denominations, not 1-ounce bars. Purchase small quantities continuously over years rather than large amounts suddenly. 2. Distribute the gold across your body during transport, in a money belt, pockets, or clothing linings. If any single location is discovered, your entire wealth won't be lost. 3. Anticipate a 10 to 30% loss due to bribes, seizures, or theft. Accumulate more than you expect to need. 4. Declare all holdings at the destination country's border. Carry any available documentation and engage legal counsel immediately. 5. Understand that this is insurance for a worst-case scenario, not for buying bread during a collapse, but for crossing borders when institutions fail and preserving accumulated life savings across regime changes. If this detailed breakdown provided a new perspective, please subscribe. This particular video was inspired by your comments requesting practical survival assets rather than just financial theory. Drop a helicopter emoji if you're already preparing for what's coming, and let me know what you'd like me to investigate next. The question isn't whether you'll be affected, it's whether you'll anticipate it or find yourself at a closed border, wondering why your bank account shows $20,000 on paper while the ATM is empty, and the person next to you with a card-sized package of gold leaves as boarding the boat to safety. Pattern recognition is not pessimism, it's preparation. The precedent is not ambiguous, it's definitive. 1.5 million Vietnamese, millions of Jewish refugees, 1 million Syrians, 5.8 million Ukrainians, the same protocol, the same asset class, the same outcome. It's not a question of if you'll need it. When did the first human enter space? What are the names of the 2 largest moons orbiting Mars? How many time zones does Russia have? If you can confidently answer these questions, you likely already possess some expertise in cosmology, astronomy, and geography. However, even if you couldn't answer these specific questions, you probably have a general understanding of these fields. This is because they are considered fundamental and are taught in schools worldwide. Now consider a different set of questions. Name a few well-known ethical dilemmas. Explain why plagiarism is unethical. Is it possible for a morally good person to harm another? These questions delve into the realm of ethics, a subject whose fundamental principles, much like those of mathematics, are universal across all cultures. Though the questions are broad, each has a definitive, logical answer. For instance,